Masyn Winn did not start on Friday for the Cardinals. So how did his 18-game hitting streak come to an end? We'll talk about it coming up on Be Schaeffer Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of Be Schaeffer Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you in the evening hours of May 31st, 2024. Final moments of May as we sit here, record near midnight. St. Louis Cardinals dropped the game on Friday night against the Phillies out at Citizens Bank Park. 4-2, Philadelphia gets the better of St. Louis in this one as Masyn Winn's hitting streak comes to an end. That ends up being a headline from this game. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Brandon Crawford home run and the start that he got, why he started in the first place, but then maybe why he didn't stay in the game. As he had a good start with a couple of hits, he was pulled for Masyn Winn, which is the reason the hit streak ended. Because Winn only got one at bat and didn't come through with a base knock. So there goes the hit streak, kablooey. Talk about that. We'll talk about Matthew Liberatore back to the bullpen, a little on Dylan Carlson's defense, and whatever else comes to mind in this edition of Be Schaeffer Daily. But hey, real quick, if you enjoy Cardinals content on a daily basis, that is basically the entire point of my channel here. So jump on board if you're so inclined and hit that subscribe button. If you're on your phone, it'll be right below the video screen. On a desktop, it's a red button that's actually in the lower right of the video itself. Appreciate y'all immensely for checking out the content. Let's talk some Cardinals baseball, huh? So Masyn Winn had the 18-game hitting streak coming in, was second all-time on the Cardinals' longest hitting streak by a rookie list. Kind of a mouthful, but he was behind only Joe McEwing, all-time among Cardinals rookies for the longest hit streak. Past Jordan Walker, past, I believe, Albert Pujols. I think both those guys had a 17-game hitting streak as a rookie. Winn was up to 18, and you kind of figured the hitting streak would be intact at the end of the day, if for no other reason than Winn was not in the starting lineup. When we got the lineups earlier this afternoon, Brandon Crawford was in there at shortstop, and Winn was getting the off day following the team off day on Thursday, which is, I understand, a controversial strategy, but something that we've seen Oli Marmol and the Cardinals try to do with a number of players. If you can get them 48 hours, they've tried to do that if at all possible. And knowing that the grueling stretch of June is beginning, as the calendar turns to June 1st and you listen to this video, the Cardinals will go the next month until July 1st and only have 2 total off days, one of which is traveling back from Birmingham in that game against the Giants at Rickwood Field. So it's just going to be a grueling stretch. And by the way, I would like to see Jordan Hicks start that game if at all possible. He gave up a few runs tonight, but had good number of strikeouts. I saw a splitter, a video of him throwing a splitter that got somebody in his start tonight. His ERA is still sub-3 on the season. I think tonight was the first night he gave up more than 3 runs in a game, or maybe even more than 2. I'd have to go look at the game logs, but I think that would be kind of fun. I don't know if he lines up. I don't know when their off days are. I'm not going to look, but I just wanted to throw that out there while I was mentioning the Rickwood Field game between the Cardinals and the Giants coming up later on in June. I think that'd be kind of fun. Anyway, let's start with Brandon Crawford, though. What a game for him, huh? He gets the start. Everybody spent their entire afternoon on social media complaining about it. And I do think it was a valid question coming in as to, okay, we know Lars Nootbaar's on the IL now. We talked about that in the Be Schaeffer Daily posted earlier Friday. It's a valid question with Jose Fermin coming up as the corresponding move for Lars Nootbaar. Could he not play some shortstop? I understand you look at the numbers that Brandon Crawford had coming in. He was hitting sub 100. He doesn't grade out very positively defensively. In fact, he grades out rather poorly defensively, whether it's range or the arm or whatever you want to look at. He generally has struggled defensively. I've seen a couple nice plays he's made, but largely it's been the disappointment has been the routine play with frequency does not get made in a timely manner. And look, I think the skills have probably diminished a bit. I also do think there is something to be said for it's difficult to, on the fly, take a start when you haven't been playing and keep yourself sharp and keep yourself fresh. And that's an aspect that's maybe been a challenge for a guy who had otherwise been a regular throughout his career. But I definitely understand the questions that Cardinals fans have about this. And I know I did a bonehead thing because I posted the video right as the Cardinals game was starting from a conversation Andy and I had on the Big Show this afternoon. So it didn't get very many views. I don't think many people saw it, which is okay. But it was actually, I thought, a pretty good conversation. So it's my damn fault for not waiting to post it until after the game was over. I honestly just wanted to see what would happen. I'm kind of a YouTube nerd at this point, and I thought, is anybody going to watch this video if I post it during the game? And I found out the answer was no. But now I know. Don't do that in the future. But in the video, a couple of things happened. We talked about, I talked through as diplomatically as I could why it is that Brandon Crawford continues to start for the days that Masyn Winn is resting, rather than, especially now, Jose Fermin, now that he's here. And basically, the short version of what I said is, if you start Jose Fermin in that spot today at shortstop, which the Cardinals have shown no inclination to do, by the way, they've never played Fermin at shortstop in the big leagues. Not this year, not last year. He's played it some in the minors, but they have not, like they've demonstrated their belief that he's maybe not a big league caliber shortstop defensively by not ever putting him there. But Brandon Crawford struggled defensively, so I understand if your thought process is, well, could Fermin, if he's got a weak arm or whatever, but could he be worse than what Crawford's been? Totally fair. Understand the question. But when you look at the way that lineup is made out, and Oli Marmol's in that clubhouse, the guys in that room have a certain role, and Brandon Crawford's role is to be the shortstop when Masyn Winn isn't. And if you don't think he's performed to a caliber deserving that, which, again, if you're ripping him today in the comments here to this video, look, I get it. The numbers still aren't great, but he had a nice day. Let's let Brandon Crawford have this one, is sort of my thought on it. He raised his average about 55 points. OPS is up to 464. He was 2 for 2 with the homer, and he also had a base hit. If you want to rip him, I don't know, wait another day. Do what you want, but I'm just kind of explaining why a thing happens that you don't like, and then you can decide to still not like it. But functionally, think about the interpersonal relationships of a clubhouse and a manager that's in charge of all these guys, and if they're suddenly kind of being ignored for their role, you can see how questions might come up, such as, all right, the one thing I was doing, now this Fermin guy's going to do it. What am I even doing here? And then from the other side of that coin is, if we don't think Brandon Crawford should start when Winn sits, what is he even doing here on our roster? And a lot of Cardinals fans might be saying, as Andy said to me in our video today, you can go back and watch it if you're interested. I thought it was a good back and forth. But he basically said, yeah, what is he doing on the roster? I said, listen, I get it. I understand. That's going to be a lot of people's perspective. But clearly, based on the Cardinals continuing to put Crawford into those spots, which has been sporadic, right? It's not now like it was at the beginning when Winn was sitting, it seemed like every series or every other series. It's been a little more sporadic, a little more spread out. And yet Crawford comes through today. But it hadn't looked good until this point, and so I do understand the questions. The other part is, with the Cardinals winning, obviously they lose today 4-2. But with them winning, that's not imminently on the radar of let's shake up the last guy on the bench who's a respected veteran in the clubhouse, has been around, has some wisdom, like signed a contract, which it's only a 1-year deal, so you could get out of that really at any point that you would choose to do so. But my point is, like, that's not on the Cardinals' radar. Whether you think it should be or not, it's not. And I'll play some Oli Marmol audio that further indicates that point. That was after the game. But before the game, it wasn't even on their radar, because once you put Fermin in that spot, it becomes so glaring to say, well, that's kind of why Crawford's here. And if somebody else can do what he's doing, then, we could do something else with that spot. The Cardinals are not angling to do that. That's not their mindset. That's not their thought process, at least right now. And the reason I say that is just based on the evidence of how they're handling the roster. Brandon Crawford gets that spot. That's the way it is. And I think, especially after today, that's the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future. But as we were going through it on the Big Show, felt a little bit bad, because it's like, man, we're really bagging Brandon Crawford here in the way that we're basically outlining, yeah, the Cardinals don't want to cut him yet, but maybe eventually they will, was sort of the premise. And so I felt like, hey, somebody's got to be in this guy's corner here. I'm going to call my shot. And then this is what ensued.
We'll see if that ends up becoming a need. Maybe Brandon Crawford comes around, but the numbers are what the numbers are at this point. So I understand if people are frustrated by it. Hopefully he hits a tater tonight. I'm going to predict it. Brandon Crawford, home run tonight.
Oh,
everybody gets off his back.
Man.
He's got a lot of pedigree in this league.
There it is. So I did. When you saw me on Twitter talking earlier about predicting the Brandon Crawford home run, that is audio proof that I did do that this afternoon on the big show. Kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I did go out on the limb and said he would do it. I just felt like somebody needed to stand up for the guy at that point. So he homered. He is a Cardinal, guys. Keep this in mind, too. I feel like social media, it breaks our brains, and sometimes you just want to find something to hate and to dislike, and most of y'all have picked Oli Marmol for that, and that's fine. He gets it. It comes with the territory. But I think a lot of people have taken some joy in kind of beating on Brandon Crawford. And look, I'm going to be objective. Later on in this podcast, I'm going to be objective about what I'm seeing from Dylan Carlson. And as much as I do like Dylan Carlson, there are some things that you could say aren't going so well for him right now, and we'll do that a little bit later. But with Brandon Crawford, it's like, all right, he did homer. He got a hit after that, 2 for 2. Nice day at the office. Let's let him have it. He's a Cardinal. I would hope that y'all are still rooting for him out there if you're a Cardinal fan. So anyway, that's sort of the thought on why Brandon Crawford in the first place. I think it's so glaring that if you really don't think he's worth the spot to play when Winn doesn't, then what is it that he does for you? The answer would be not much. And yet, Oli continued to have that faith. He made it happen with the home run off of Aaron Nola, for goodness sakes. I mean, the Cardinals only had 3 hits today. Can we talk about that? The offense was, they got shut down by Nola. Again, it's what always happens when they play Aaron Nola. He has their number, historically. ERA in the 2s, which I get. Aaron Nola's, he's going to have an ERA in the 3s, probably for the course of his career. But, I mean, he just has owned the St. Louis Cardinals over the course of time. Far more often than not, he's been shutting them down. For Brandon Crawford to hit the dinger off of him, well done. But I want you to listen to the way Oli Marmol talks about Brandon Crawford postgame, and then we'll get into some other topics. I really want to talk more about Masyn Winn's hitting streak and the fact that it's gone, and maybe it didn't need to be that way. But we'll get into it. First, if you don't believe me, hear it from Oli Marmol, the way he feels about Brandon Crawford. This doesn't sound like a guy that's just clinging to a roster spot.
What Crawford did at shortstop, he's played 5 times this month.
Extremely difficult, and did a nice job, man. Nola pitched well tonight, and to take him deep and get another hit against him was key. So really nice job. When you're not playing every day and you're a guy that's played a long time and you get into a rhythm and you've done it as long as Crawford, to do what he's doing for this club right now is very difficult. So a lot of respect for that.
That audio is courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. So like I said, let me know in the comments below what you think about that. But if you hear Oli there, clearly this is a respected guy on the team. So the notion of they're going to DFA him anytime soon, it just does not seem like it's going to happen. And honestly, when you're only playing 5 times a month, you're talking about very minimal impact. I understand that you can think in your mind of some glaring moments where you're like, oh, man, he should have made that play. And look, we'll harp on him. But at the same time, you are talking about the 26th man on the roster. So I just don't know the upside of making that move versus upsetting the apple cart. Guys in the room like him. Like, I'm not saying that this is like a Taylor Motter situation where he was on scholarship and it was on a team that wasn't competing, so it didn't really matter. I think Brandon Crawford does have something to bring to the table beyond that level of contribution with what you saw with Motter last year. But again, the numbers are the numbers. He just would need one game where he has a 3 for 4. I mean, the 2 for 2 just raised his numbers up. So maybe the numbers would look different at that point. Understand the frustration, but like I said, that's kind of where it is with Brandon Crawford. And by the way, he maybe could have gone 3 for 4 or 4 for 4 today, but he didn't get a third at bat. Let's talk about Masyn Winn, the 18-game hitting streak coming to an end. He doesn't start in the game, but in the 7th inning, lefty Matt Strahm on the mound for Philadelphia, Oli Marmol decides to go for it. He says, look, best matchup in this spot against a lefty reliever is going to be our right-hander, Masyn Winn, instead of the lefty bat, Brandon Crawford. Even though Brandon Crawford's got the homer, even though Brandon Crawford's got a base hit before that, he's 2 for 2. Even though he's clearly seen the ball well tonight, you're going to play the percentages and play the matchups and try to get that platoon advantage right on left rather than left on left. It was the same inning that Arenado had hit a home run, so now it's a 3-2 game, which was, by the way, great to see. His 5th of the year, hit the foul pole, Crawford's home run, Arenado's home run, Crawford's single. Those are the only 3 hits for the Cardinals all night, so we don't really need to talk very much else about the offense. But Arenado homers in the 7th, and that maybe contextualizes a little bit the decision for Oli to get aggressive. It's a little bit of a weird spot to do it, though, because Herrera struck out after the Nato bomb, and that's when they make the pitching change to the lefty to basically dare Oli to take Brandon Crawford out of the game. It's a weird move, I think, if you're the Phillies, because Dylan Carlson on deck is a switch hitter, but he'd probably rather face a lefty in general too. But maybe the Phillies thought it just doesn't matter. He's going to strike out regardless, and that happened. Dylan struck out. But Masyn Winn took the AB with 1 out, nobody on base. It's just such a low-leverage spot to me. Like, I get it, and also you are upgrading defensively to have Winn in the game for the final couple of innings, and it's a 1-run game, so maybe that can be the margin where it makes the difference. Having his defense versus having Brandon Crawford at shortstop could be the difference in that game. So I'm not knocking Oli Marmol for managing to win the game because I do think that's what he was doing. I've seen some comments. He didn't know about the hit streak. He didn't care about the hit streak. That's just fundamentally false, and I'll read you the quotes explaining why here momentarily. But this is why you should get your news from places that know what they're talking about and not something you read on Twitter and say, yeah, I heard Oli just didn't care. He didn't know about the streak. Well, no, that's not what happened. Here's the tweet that I sent, and it took me like 15 minutes to send it the way I wanted to say it because I was trying to help get the toddler to bed and send the tweet and keep an eye on what was going on with the game. I said this. I didn't make a stink of giving Winn the day off to begin an important series and even predicted a Crawford homers for the lulz, and then it happened, which we already talked about. But if you're going to do it, maybe leave him in after 2 for 2 with a homer. Winning the game is the most important part. I get it. But unless Crawford strained himself getting an RBI, and the homer was his first RBI on the season, that was probably a bit of a cheap shot, though. Again, we're celebrating the guy having a good day. I didn't need to go there. But I did think it was kind of funny that it was his first RBI. So in the moment, I was literally waiting for a text or something from Cardinal PR that, Brandon Crawford has left the game with whatever, and that was the explanation for the Winn thing. But when you look at it and go, it's Matt Strahm on the mound, it's lefty-lefty. Otherwise, you can bring Winn in for righty-lefty. There was no injury. But I said winning the game is most important. I understand that. But unless Crawford strained himself, it feels kind of lame to risk nuking Winn's 18-game hitting streak like that. Just my opinion. I put that out on Twitter. I don't know how many people agree with it, disagree with it. I didn't get to read all the comments to that one because I was dealing with the youngster. But I did want to put that out there because I'm like, come on, man. It's a cool thing. He's second all-time on the Cardinals list for rookie hit streaks. He's 7 behind Super Joe McEwing. Let's kind of have that. Let's see what he can do there. That would be a fun story to continue to follow. So you give him every crack at it, right? You give him every possible chance to extend it. You felt strongly enough that he needed the day off. If they're still being, John Denton wrote in his story, precautionary because of the back thing, that they're going to try to do that throughout the year, and it's better if they can get him 2 days off in a row. What's better than 1 day off, 2 days off, and then this big long stretch coming up without many off days. So that's the way they were going to do it. And I get it. Did he need the day off? Yeah, probably not. If you're pissed about that, that's fine. If you're pissed about that after watching the game, little weird because Crawford again was 66% of the offense today. He had 2 hits, had a homer. But if you were mad about it pregame, as many people were, I get it. You might have been thinking, why Crawford over Fermin? Or you might have just been thinking, Masyn Winn's 22. Why can they just get on with it? Have him start the game. Totally get it. But once you make the decision that the rest for Winn is more valuable than having him in there to start the game, I'm kind of on board with just letting him have the day off, unless you're up by a run late and you want the defensive replacement, or there's an opportunity to pinch run or something like that. I get it. There are going to be moments in the game that make sense for it. I guess if he pinch runs, does it count as a game played and the hit streak dies? I guess I don't know the answer to that. It should be fairly obvious, but I'm not going to spend much time on it because we're already 20 minutes in and I got a lot to get to. But I just thought, I know the hit streak is not as important as winning a game, especially with where the Cardinals are. They're now a game below 500. You win that game, you're above 500 for the first time in, is that all year? Have they done that? They win on opening day? I can't remember. No, of course not. That was the Dodgers series. So no, they did not win on opening day. So it'd be a big deal to get the win. And if Masyn Winn helps you do that, more power to you. I just thought, man, that's a little bit brutal. It's not like we have to take it out of context and say, Oli Marmol's the worst manager ever because he didn't know or he didn't care about Masyn Winn's hitting streak. We don't have to do that game. But I can say, I didn't like the decision. Just my opinion. I didn't think he should have done it. And that's basically removed from consideration of what Brandon Crawford had done to that point in the game. He went 2 for 2 with a bomb. I would have kept him in there. I really would have. I would have said, hey, man, you've been waiting for your turn, and you've taken advantage of it tonight. You hit a bomb off a tough customer in Aaron Nola. We're riding you to the end. We're riding you to the wheels fall off in this game. It's like he got pulled like he made 2 errors and went over, which happened at a game previously this year. Masyn Winn came in for the third at bat after, Crawford had just kind of struggled in the field and was striking out every time. So they made that switch. This wasn't the case. Crawford was playing well. Now, I think if you read the stories from postgame for the folks that are covering the Cardinals in Philly, Brandon Crawford doesn't care. He's not worried about it, getting pulled. It didn't hurt his feelings. He's a big boy. He'll be all right. So the notion of, they ruined his confidence. I'm not going to play that game with 37-year-old Brandon Crawford, who's been playing MLB longer than I've been covering it, for sure. Longer than I've been out of high school, for sure. I mean, what's Brandon Crawford's rookie year? He's been around the block, man. Let's take a look at the old page here. He's 37. He was a Giant starting in 2011. Yeah, I was still in high school. So Brandon Crawford's going to be all right. But some of the quotes are interesting. We'll take a look at those. Brandon Crawford said, this is Brandon Crawford of Masyn Winn. He kind of got put in that situation where he only had 1 at bat to continue his hit streak. That was the last thing I wanted. I was rooting as hard as anybody in the dugout for him. That's what Crawford said, according to John Denton's story. So, all right, Brandon Crawford, good teammate. He wanted to see Winn continue the streak too. It didn't happen. Crawford also added, I'd be surprised if an 18-game hit streak is the career high at the end of it for Masyn Winn. So pumping Winn's tires a little bit. That's good. He's filling the role, guys. Brandon Crawford's saying the right things, doing the right things. I understand it. The numbers aren't what you want them to be. If in a week he starts again for Winn and goes 3 for 4, suddenly his average will be 220 just like everybody else, and it'll be OPS 600, and it'll be, we'll forget all about him hitting 097. Small sample sizes, things can happen like that. Unfortunately for Brandon Crawford, it's June. He just doesn't get to play very much to change his sample size. That's all. But I think more so than Crawford and what he had to say about the whole deal is what Masyn Winn would have had to say about it, right? And Oli Marmol, too. Marmol said, according to John Denton, and props to John Denton, go read his story at MLB.com. A lot of good stuff in here. I had seen that Derek Gould had put it out on Twitter that Oli had commented on it and said it was all he was thinking about all day leading up to the game was would he use Masyn in that spot if it came to it. Obviously, he chose to do so. Derek had said there'd be more coming later. I never did see the quotes yet appear in his story, but JD's got them. Here's a quote from Oli. Quote, it's the only thing I thought of all morning, and it's the first thing I thought of when I woke up because I care about it, especially for Masyn and the job he's been doing. I asked Masyn, hey, if this presents itself, what do you want to do? He said, I want to win a ball game. Put me in there. So there you go. That's what Masyn said to Oli before the game. He knew what the deal was. If there's a chance for me to help us win a game, that's what I want to do. Oli adding, which I do, I'm going to read this too because I think people need to hear it. So I do care about the hitting streak. I assume that's in parentheses in brackets because I assume he said, so I do care about it. He meant the hitting streak. It was the one decision I didn't want to have to make all day. It's a one-run ball game, and if you ask him if he wants to extend the streak one more day or win the division, I'm pretty sure he'd be pretty clear on which he'd prefer. That was Oli Marmol talking about it after the game. Masyn Winn said, quote, the lefty came in, and you've got to bring me in that situation, and I've got to get the job done and get on base. That's what Masyn Winn said. You got to bring me in because it's a lefty. That's what we do. And I've got to get the job done and get on base. We've got to go for the win every day. That definitely sucks to get one AB, but with the lefty coming in, you don't want him facing left on left because that's tough. I'm talking about Crawford. I've just got to get the job done and get on base. Masyn Winn, I don't think anybody should have a problem with any of the things that anybody said. Oli, does he care about the streak? He does. Does he care about winning the division and taking his best shot every night? He does. And you know Masyn Winn feels the same, and you know Brandon Crawford feels the same. It's just one of those that everybody felt bad about it because, yeah, it's one of those things, kind of awkward, kind of like, you got screwed. But also, Masyn Winn, he's not blaming anybody. He said that's what had to happen. That's how you play strategic baseball. He gets the matchup, and he said it's just my job to come through, and I didn't get it done. So, I mean, wise beyond his years is what I would say about Masyn Winn. Heck of a teammate is what I would say for Brandon Crawford in the way that he described the situation. And I know people like to beat on Oli Marmol, but I thought he handled it very well. Didn't do what I would have done. Again, these are the players. These are the guys competing for it, and they're always going to know more than me, sitting on the sidelines, talking about it, writing about it. But I can say, look, I think it's kind of a bummer. I would have liked to have seen the streak go and continue. Completely different conversation we're having if Masyn Winn doubles there and then somebody drives him in. Cardinals would find a way to win this game, right? So I'm totally understanding of all of it. The thing of it is, when we do a daily podcast like we do on this channel and on this Spotify feed and on this Apple Podcast feed, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. When you do that, we get into the weeds on the minutia of the daily grind of a Cardinals season. And so none of it, some of it might be life or death as it pertains to the season. Not hopefully real life or death, but like this hitting streak is not the end all be all of what we're going to talk about. And yet we're finding a way to talk about it for a half an hour tonight because that's what we do when we talk about the team every day. So I bring this up to make sure everybody understands the context of like, we can talk about a thing at length and not be fired up about it and not think it is the end of the world or that somebody should be fired because of it. That context can be lost sometimes, I feel. So that's why I take some time to mention it. But that's my thoughts on it. Understanding what everybody had to say about it. Masyn Winn himself said, I got to come in there. I got to try to win the game. I would have let it go the other way, personally, because I would have liked to have seen the hit streak. And, frankly, nobody was on base. There was already an out in the inning. I wonder, and it's so easy to say with hindsight. And I hate when people do this, so I'm going to call myself out for it. It's easy to say now because the Cardinals didn't win the game. Masyn Winn didn't get a hit, which means the hit streak died. It was the worst case scenario outcome for that inning and for the game itself that the gamble didn't pay off. The gamble, I say the term gamble, he was gambling with the streak, but he wasn't prioritizing that. He was prioritizing, hey, this is a right on left that we can take advantage of and maybe win the game here. So that's what they had to do, and nobody involved in it disagreed. So even though I kind of said, yeah, I disagree, just my opinion, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It's not the end all be all. It's just kind of how I look at it. Let me know how you look at it, Cardinals fans. Comment below with your thoughts on this one. It's a tough one, but I think all in all, we can understand how they came to the decision they came to. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. Talk about a couple of other things before we get out of here. I guess I should mention the starter, Mikolas. Did it again. Pitched pretty well. Had the quality start. Gave up an absolute nuke. I'm talking a moonshot to Edmundo Sosa, whose OPS is damn near 1,000. I don't know if you guys realize that. I tweeted about it earlier because it's just one of those things. It seems like, oh yeah, former Cardinal, he's kicking around. He's got an OPS of 969. They've had Trey Turner on the mend, and he's been playing shortstop every day and raking. And took a Mikolas slider that he hung the crap out of and blasted it towering shot to center, way up there, several rows deep, no doubt about it, to dead center, which is a tough thing to do. So Mikolas will do that. He'll give up a bomb. Looking at his numbers this year, month of May, he had, in May, he ended up with 6 starts because he started on the first day and the last day of May. 6 starts, and 5 of the 6 starts were really, really good, or at least solid. Quality starts, 6-inning, 3-run. He did that 4 times out of 6. Right? That's like the quintessential Mikolas start. You're not going to lower your 5.64 ERA too often doing that. It's going to tick down little by little, and that's why I've been saying he'll end up 4.9, 5.0 for ERA because he's having a hard time lowering it quickly. It's like the Cardinals as they were winning 2 out of 3 to erase the 7-game losing streak. They had to sweep somebody to really be able to get back to 500 more quickly. Mikolas had an ERA of 6.43 after he got blown up on May 7th a bit against the Mets, and he's been 6-3, 5-1, 6-3, 6-3 to try and get that thing down. Now it's around 5.5. But he's been pitching like good enough. He's given up 4 home runs in the month of May across those 6 starts, and only 1 home run in each. Like the starts in which he gave one up, it was just 1. He didn't have any starts where he gave up multiple, not since April 20th. So he's putting the Cardinals in position to win games, is basically what I'm saying. You go 5 out of 6 games in May, giving up no more than 3 runs, and going 6 innings in 4 of those starts, going 5 innings in the other one, and in the one you didn't go as deep, you gave up fewer runs. He's given him a chance to win 5 out of 6 times in the month of May. And if you go back to April, his last start of April was 5 2/3, 2 runs. So Mikolas is on a run now. If you look back, April was a disaster for him. But the very last start of April and then the 6 starts since then, that's 6 out of 7. Essentially, they're not all technically quality starts, but they've been good and certainly good enough. If you're going 6, allowing 3, you're giving your team a chance to win. And he's had a couple starts even better than that, and one that was a dud. So the ERA is not going to reflect it, but he's giving you quintessential number 3, number 4 starter value right now. Problem is he was sort of billed as the number 2 coming in, and he's not going to be that. But that's okay. The consistency, I don't think Cardinals fans mind that. Let me know, where are you at on Mikolas? Don't just look at the ERA and then tell me where you're at on him. If you've watched him the last month, where are you at on him, honestly? Because I'm saying, look, he's going to give up 1. He's going to make a mistake in almost every game and give up a bomb. Hopefully it's a solo shot. Today, I think it was a 2-run shot. Those moments are going to happen. But all in all, I think he's been pretty solid last month or so, keeping the team in games. I don't know that I'm eager to have him in a playoff series if that's where this is eventually heading. But, for the regular season, he's given the team a chance to win. They just are going to have to find a number 2. Because I don't know if you start a playoff series, Sonny Gray, and then you're going Mikolas, I don't know. Kyle Gibson probably would be your answer right now, but even that, he's more of a number 3. Mikolas would be more of a number 4. And so on. Maybe Palante's there too. Who knows? Looked good the last time out. We'll see. But let me know your thoughts on Mikolas. I'll say real quickly, the update with Donovan. He was out of the lineup today, scratched late due to a stiff neck. Oli Marmol talking about it after the game, said he just pregame couldn't take batting practice, couldn't really turn his head. I've been dealing with a neck thing too, so I get it. But he plays professional baseball. I don't, so let's not compare. Basically, it doesn't sound like anything super serious, but couldn't turn his head. That's not what you want. I think he'll probably be just fine. But if he's not, we'll know pretty soon. If he's out of the lineup on Saturday, you can start to be concerned. I'd say I'm DEFCON 4 right now. I think it's a 5-point scale. We like to use the DEFCONs around here to explain concern level. I had told you that with Newt Barr, it was a 2, if I recall correctly. And that ended up being pretty correct because it's a moderate oblique strain, which is worse than being a mild one, which is worse than not having one at all. So, I think we nailed it on the DEFCON with that one. I have not seen on Keenan Middleton whether there's been anything official. That one I graded as a DEFCON 1 the other day, full-blown nuclear event. Second opinion is where he's at, according to Derek Gould as of earlier today. So, it's probably going the way of the TJ or the repair. I think he's going to need a surgical intervention, which stinks.
Brendan Donovan, though, I'm DEFCON 4 on that. I'm not as low as I could be, because if I were, he would have like no injuries whatsoever. But he missed the game today. Stiff neck. Necks are weird. Backs are weird. You don't want to mess with them. I'm going to say DEFCON 4, though. Very little concern at this point. It'll go up to at least a 3 if he's out of the lineup again Saturday, though. I'll tell you that right now. So that's where it's at on Brendan Donovan. I did want to bring up Dylan Carlson. He was in the game tonight. Wouldn't have been if not for the Donovan scratch, by the way, which is interesting. Because when you have Nootbaar go down, you don't bring an outfielder like Jordan Walker up, and the reason for that is he hasn't homered yet. He's OPSing sub 700 in Memphis. Decent batting average, but no power to speak of. So they bring Firmino up, but he's not really an outfielder. You have to assume Carlson's going to be in the lineup, right? But as I said on podcasts, whatever it was, we had a bunch of videos on the channel yesterday. In one or two of them, I probably said it. You could go Siani in center, flanked by Donovan and Burleson in left or right or vice versa, and still not play Dylan Carlson. And I'll be darned if that's not what Oli Marmol is going to do today until Donovan got scratched and Dylan went in. Dylan is playing with an all-time low confidence, and it's hard to blame him, but also it's your career, so you got to make the most of it. But, like, he's got no cachet with the organization right now. Nootbaar goes down, and they're still not finding a way to get him in the outfield. It's a Donovan, Siani, Burleson outfield, and they're going, Dylan, you're good. You're good over there on the bench, which, again, didn't end up happening because Donovan got scratched and Carlson played. But it just doesn't feel great right now. He did reach base, so that's nice. He had a walk. He was 0 for 2 with a walk and a strikeout. Struck out against the lefty Strom, as we mentioned there in the 7th. Did get on base. Not a lot of Cardinals were able to say that today, so you can appreciate that. They only had 2 walks. 2 walks, 3 hits, that was it. But defensively, I got a tweet. I got a reply from somebody, and I'll admit, I didn't see the actual play this time because I was, like I said, doing the stuff, trying to get the toddler to bed. But Carmi said, what has happened to Carlson's defense? That was an awful throw that he should make. Like I said, didn't see the play. But it prompted me to retweet him and say this because I believe what Carmi was saying because I've been seeing it for weeks from Dylan, unfortunately. Ever since returning from the IL, he has been 2021 Lane Thomas defensively. For those who recall, that's not a compliment. It's been inexplicably rough for Carlson for several weeks, is what I tweeted. And like I said earlier in the show tonight, feel bad about it. I like Dylan Carlson. He has not looked good. And the reference to Lane Thomas in 2021 was after he had COVID in 2020. He had kind of long COVID, I guess, or COVID fog, that if you watched some of his games in the outfield defensively in 21 before the Cardinals traded him, it was like, what is going on? And he hit like 100. It was rough. And now you look at Lane Thomas, and he's like a legit big league outfielder. A lot of tools, plays good defense, can hit. I'll check out his numbers for this year. This year he's declined a little bit. His numbers are down this year for sure. Only hitting 212, low OPS. But with the Cardinals in 21, he hit 104 with a 125 slug in 58 plate appearances. Like that's just it's not a big sample, but it's not nothing. 58 plate appearances. He hit 104. I think that's more plate appearances than Brandon Crawford's had to this point. And Brandon Crawford's now hitting like 150. Yeah. So it was rough. It looks rough for Dylan right now, is my point. And it's painful to say because, again, this guy had such a bright future, and he's still young enough that he could make good on some of it. But you know what happened later in 2021? Lane Thomas went to the Nationals, and he hit 270. He had a good OPS, and then some even better years since then. Sometimes change of scenery is the only answer, and I don't know right now if I would predict Dylan to ultimately reach his peak of whatever his career will become while he's still in St. Louis. That might come after, which would suck to realize. Let me know what you think, though, on that when it comes to Dylan Carlson. We were talking on the big show about the Dylan Carlson for Daniel Lynch idea. Lynch actually pitched for the Royals the other day. 5 innings. I think he gave up 2 earned runs, 3 total runs. Pitched okay. That was just an idea we were floating, or my co-host floated, Andy, before the Palante start. And then Palante happened. I'm like, all right, maybe not as much of a need for a 5th starter, but keep an eye on it because if Palante flames out, they'll be right back in that same boat. But I'd let Palante go for a couple more turns and see what that looks like before declaring, yes, you got to trade for somebody. I do think you got to have a number 2, though,
So if the number 2 bumps out the number 5, then that's, that is what it is. But I don't know, man. If Palante continues to do what he did against the Reds, which I get it's the Reds, but that might be a guy that you do want pitching every 5th day. So we'll see. We'll reserve judgment. It's June. We're just starting June. Long way to go. A lot of baseball to be played. One more thing to touch on tonight before we get out of here. Matthew Liberatore back in the pen. Yeah, he looked good. Imagine that. I thought Oli Marmol almost sounded like exhausted by answering the question about Libby post-game on what I saw on Bally Sports Midwest. Not because he's not happy that he pitched well. Had 3 strikeouts in an inning in the 3rd, scoreless, hitless, walkless. Just good outing from Libby. And it was almost like he was kind of like, yes, we know. He's great in the bullpen. He doesn't start well. We know. And like frustration over, well, why can't he do this when he's starting? But I'll play the audio for you from Bally Sports, and you can tell me if I'm off base on that take.
Libby back in the bullpen, and he looked nasty tonight. Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, 3 punch-outs and against some really good dudes. So he looked good, and we've talked about it. Things tick up a little bit for him in the pen when it's just short burst, and he's done well in that role. Yeah.
So I don't know if my read is right there, but it's kind of like, yeah, we know he's really good in the bullpen. What might have been if he could have been as a starter, which again, I don't think it's Libby's fault because the Cardinals, they kind of set him up to fail. He was not stretched out as a starter, and they said, hey, go start. And for a guy who has historically had maybe a little bit of a mentality gap, a mindset gap when he goes from relief to the rotation, maybe, that was not the best plan. Maybe they were trying to trick him. Basically say, hey, pretend you're a reliever, but just do it at the beginning. And then once he built up more, he was like, wait a minute, I'm starting? I can't do this same. I can't throw 95. I'm just being silly. Everybody calm down. I will say this about Libby, though. I didn't know he had 97 in the bag, but I was looking at the StatCast numbers. He had one sinker that was clocked at 97.4 on StatCast to Bryce Harper. The first pitch of the AB, if I'm not mistaken. So he was clearly pumped up to face him in a lefty-lefty matchup. Got him swinging, too. I mean, Libby looked legit tonight. And it's just going to be what it is. I think he could end up being a back-end relief like Andrew Miller. Remember him? Not when he was with the Cardinals. He was fine with the Cardinals. But like before that, when he was just that Andrew Miller, like with Cleveland in the playoffs. I mean, I think I wouldn't put it past Libby to be that good. He's got real good stuff when he's got confidence on the mound. When he is that bulldog out there. So let me know your thoughts on Libby. Could be another weapon for the Cardinals in the bullpen. He was that before they put him in the rotation, and maybe he is that again. Pair that with John King, with JoJo Romero. The left side is very much intact right now, it feels like. Knock on wood. Because we still haven't seen JoJo in a while. I think he's okay, but until we see him. But yeah, nice to have that weapon for Oli Marmol as he manages these games coming up. Cardinals got to win a game here in Philly. Obviously, you wanted to win the series, but now that you lost the first one, it just kind of feels like just make sure you get one. Because a sweep on the wrong side is too big of a backslide to endure just because it doesn't sound fun. And then you're going to Houston, and Houston's got a bad record this year, but they're still the Astros. They're still going to find a way to compete with you. Just get one of these next two, and I think you can live with it. Get yourself back home intact within a game or so of 500, however the rest of this thing goes. Going to Houston after this. And I think some of the games coming up, like next week, not too bad in terms of the way the schedule plays out, right? Just speaking generally about the difficulty level of the teams you're going to be facing. They host Colorado for 4, and then you get a day off, and then you host Pittsburgh for 3. You probably see Paul Skeens one of those games, but it's like, that's not so bad. And then you go to Wrigley, to Miami. Cubs are tough, you know that, but Wrigley's always fun. Gosh dang it, I'm mad I'm not going to be at that June series at Wrigley. And then to Miami. Miami's been a dumpster fire. So, winnable games coming up if they can just get through this stretch intact. 2 more against Philly, 3 against Houston. If you go, you'd like to go 3-2, come back home 500, but even if you go 2-3 and you're 2 games under, I think after 7 against the Rockies and Pirates, you should probably be back to 500 at least. But if they can leave this road trip with a 500 record on the season, 3-2 in their next 5, and then do a 5-2 at home, suddenly you're building a little cushion on top of 500. So let me know, Cardinals fans, how you feeling? Didn't get it done on Friday night, lost 4-2. Cardinals drop 1 to the Phils. But they're still right in the mix. So let me know what you think. Comment below. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel. I think we're close to 3,400 or something. It's been a lot of fun building it up, and I want to continue to see it grow. And tell your friends, too. If you have friends who are Cardinals fans and you're like, oh, what do you listen to? Yeah, Be Safe Daily is what I listen to. Because this dude's insane, and at 1:30 in the morning is talking Cardinals baseball almost every day of his life. So there you go. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on Be Safe Daily. Peace.